Blog Talk Radio.
Good evening. Welcome to The View Up Here. I am your host, Canadian Glenn, and it is October 10th, 2018. Tonight, let me start that again. My friends, tonight, change means reverse only. At the Jason Kenney, Doug Ford Lugenrally last Friday in Calgary. Yes, I have attended my first Trump rally in Canada. Co-starring Jason Kenney and Doug Ford taking the marquee billing to preach to the approximately 1,500 extras from the live version of King of the Hill. Complete with MAGA hats, both America and Alberta, Trump jerseys, Trudeau Sucks t-shirts, a damn good honky-tonk band, and of course we're in Calgary, 2 cash bars running full out. Ah yes, Calgary, the Nuremberg of the CPC. So drawing 1,500 people with national advertising provided by corporate media in a city of 1 million isn't exactly a wave of change. But hey, don't tell them that. And not surprisingly, it was pretty easy to notice certain tendencies in the crowd. Flock, Choir, Hank and Peggy Hill were out in force, as were some Bobby Hills, a few dozen Luanns, more than enough Dale Gribbles, Bill Contingent, and of course, the Boomhauers were well represented. Okay, apparently I'm back. My call got dropped, so I'm going to just pretty much skip all that. Son of a bitch. That was the part about the Hill and the King of the Hill part. Oh, well. You can read the show page, the script. There was only one topic at this rally. The advertised topic was that job-killing, tax-grabbing, business bankrupting, investment-phobic, socialist, tree-hugging Dreamland carbon tax. The one nobody voted for. The one that won't change anything except what's in your pockets. But the actual message was much simpler. Much easier to instill and provoke Dominions to action of some sort. Fear. Was there mention that Big Oil supports pricing of carbon? Was there any detail of what it actually does? Was it stated the provinces decide how to spend it in the federal program? Of course not. They made this tax, so we must destroy it. Details like climate change mitigation were simply not in the script. Let's just make money like it's 1948 again, and Leduc No.1 was just discovered. Campaigning never ends in Canada anymore, and it's clear what the message is. Carbon tax is the tool to avoid an actual platform. Misinformation is the medium, and fear is the lever for all parties right of center. Get used to it. It's too bad I dropped out and I didn't get that stuff in. Oh well, too bad. That's how it goes. Welcome to BTR. Now, for a little background, it was estimated before it happened to be 1,000 people. I was there. I would say 1,500 is accurate. I'm familiar with the place it was held. I know what the capacity was. So claims of 2,000 by Jason Kenney and right-wing media are bullshit. 1,500? Yeah, I'd say so. Jason Kenney actually spoke a fair amount longer than Doug Ford. I imagine that's all Doug Ford can take in one sitting. I've broken down their speeches into sections to allow comment, mostly to dispel the lies in that segment. But overall, Jason Kenney spoke around 32 minutes. Doug Ford, a little more than 20. But, yeah, it was an event. There's no doubt about it. But I'm going to start it off now. This is Jason Kenney. He has been introduced to the stage by a nominated candidate in Calgary. I'll play this, and then we'll talk about that one. You'll figure out what the pattern's going to be for tonight. So this is Jason Kenney taking the stage last Friday in Calgary.
Holy smokes! What a crowd! I see a couple of thousand people in this room representing millions of Albertans sending a clear message. To Premier Notley and her close friend and ally Justin Trudeau, scrap your carbon tax. Look at the energy in this room. First of all, let me thank the remarkable Albertan who introduced me, Sonia Savage, an expert on the environment, on energy, a passionate and committed Albertan who is going to make a brilliant member of the Legislative Assembly from Calgary.
Okay, just a little disclaimer as well. I recorded this. That's why it is the way it is. I did my best. But Sonia Savage, a great environmentalist, according to her leader. Well, this is the statement that was on the UCP website from leader Kenney. I would like to congratulate Sonia Savage on winning the hotly contested UCP nomination in Calgary Northwest. I'm thrilled to have another strong, talented, conservative woman like Sonia join our UCP team. With over a decade spent working in the pipeline sector, Sonia has seen firsthand the devastating impacts that come from Alberta's inability to secure market access for our energy products. Her extensive experience in all aspects of energy policy, from regulatory issues to Aboriginal reconciliation, will be a huge asset as we work to restore the Alberta advantage and get our province back on track. Well, if you go to Sonia Savage's LinkedIn profile, she is the Senior Director for Policy and Regulatory Affairs at the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association. Senior Director, Regulatory Affairs, with a Master of Laws, Environment and Energy, and a proven track record for developing strategies to influence public policy, advocate for regulatory efficiency and competitiveness, manage government relations, and build positive relationships in a complex and evolving political and regulatory arena. So, true to form, when someone is described as a great environmentalist, by a right-wing leader, that means they are great at working against the environment. And from the sounds of it, Aboriginal groups as well. Yeah, it sounds like Sonia's a great candidate looking forward into the future for the UCP. Good luck with that. Of course, for those who are not aware, Calgary Northwest is the riding held by current Cabinet Minister Sandra Jansen. You can see what the game is there. But let's carry on, shall we?
Sonia is part of an amazing, dedicated, diverse, and talented team of Albertans from all backgrounds and walks of life who are stepping forward to send a message that we will fight over the next 8 months, right until the ballots are closed, to get our province back on track, to renew the Alberta advantage, to reignite our economy, and to make sure that Alberta is open for business again. Other amazing candidates are here. By the way, we're halfway through our nominations. A lot of folks still working hard. Please support the folks that you believe will be a strong voice for you.
Please support those candidates running for nominations out there. Perhaps you heard the same night this was happening in Calgary, in Edmonton, there was a pub event put on by a UCP riding, Edmonton West Henday. 3 candidates for their nomination were there. It seems that there were some friends, shall we say, of the party there to meet the candidates. Didn't go too well. The first piece I'm going to read is from Press Progress. The headline is 3 UCP candidates got caught partying with a hate group. Jason Kenney's excuse makes no sense. Over the weekend, the Soldiers of Odin, a group founded by a violent neo-Nazi, classified as an anti-Muslim hate group by the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, made headlines across Alberta after they were spotted partying with multiple UCP nomination contestants for Edmonton West Henday. The Soldiers of Odin have been covered extensively by the media in recent years after the group established vigilante patrols and organized an anti-Muslim rally outside of Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium. Declassified intelligence reports suggest the group is prone to violence. Photos from a UCP pub night in Edmonton show UCP nomination candidates Leila Houle, Nicole Williams, and Lance Coulter hanging out and posing for photos with members of the Soldiers of Odin hate group. Now, the party's official explanation is they were tricked into taking the photos. Never mind, none of the candidates thought it was odd. They were surrounded by a group of people wearing matching black hats, t-shirts, and jackets displaying the group's name and an image of their logo, a demonic-looking Norse god. After the photos surfaced, Kenney said he was disturbed to learn that a UCP pub night in Edmonton was crashed by members of hate groups. The UCP, as well as the president of the local constituency association, both claimed the candidates were tricked by a fringe group who had deliberately crashed a UCP event to cause mischief. And they added, anyone could show up since the event was held at a public bar. Except it seems like there are a few holes in this explanation. For one thing, it's a little hard for the UCP to dismiss the Soldiers of Odin as random party crashers, considering several members of the group actually RSVP'd in advance to let UCP officials know they'd be dropping by. And another thing, one of the people Kenney called a party crasher insists they were invited by the local UCP constituency association. Dave Bjorkman is a UCP activist who has been involved with the party since it was founded last year, participating in the party's nomination process and attending numerous party events. He is also the leader of the separatist Alberta Independence Party, an unregistered political party, which, despite his name, effectively exists only as a glorified right-wing Facebook group. I went to the event invited by the UCP to meet Leila Houle, Bjorkman wrote in a Facebook post. I did not invite the groups to the party. UCP did. All were invited by the Constituency Association. Whoever invited them to the party, it's strange that Kenney's UCP are acting so surprised, considering the soldiers of Odin were on the guest list and the accused ringleader is a familiar face. Although Kenney now dismisses Bjorkman as a random fringe figure, the fact remains the two have shared a drink or two at past events. Now go to Mac Lamoureux in Vice. This came out yesterday. A group of Alberta Conservative candidates are in some hot water after taking some photos with easily identifiable members of a far-right group. According to a gloating post on Facebook after the event, there were several far-right groups, known for their stance against immigrants, in attendance of a conservative meet and greet. The Soldiers of Odin, the militia-like group 3% Alberta, the Proud Boys, the Soldiers of Christ, and the Klansmen. And that's Klansmen with two N's because, we're a completely different group. Well, there were numerous far-right groups in the pub. By far the largest group in attendance were the Soldiers of Odin, who have been operating in Edmonton for over 2 years now. A 2017 CBSA intelligence bulletin, some members adhere to extreme right-wing ideology and are not afraid to use violence to achieve objectives. Two of the candidates, Williams and Houle, released a joint statement together, whereas Lance Coulter has been quiet on the issue. We were unfortunately not aware of what the abbreviation SOO stood for when these individuals entered the public venue, nor are we aware of this group's disgusting views. Had we known at the time, we certainly would not have had our pictures taken with these individuals. There has been some rebuttal from other groups here, locally in Alberta, mostly independent media. Progress Alberta, through Duncan Kenney, the executive director, took issue with this attempt to hand-wave the situation away. Mr. Kenney said, the Soldiers of Odin made province-wide news in Alberta and Edmonton last month. They've been in the news multiple times since they've popped up here. They all showed up wearing matching hats and hoodies and T-shirts and patches, including full back patches that say, Soldiers of Odin, Edmonton. The UCP folks were either too dumb to realize who these people were, or they were happy to have the support. Either way, they don't deserve to be in office. So, that's the great team that Jason Kenney's talking about all across Alberta. Work for your candidates, the ones that stand around with the Soldiers of Odin. Let's carry on.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here from as far away as Lacrete. I saw a busload coming in from Medicine Hat. Where are the hats?
Mormons.
We've got people from Grand Prairie. We've got a few Edmontonians here. And by the way, we are going to paint Edmonton blue in the next provincial election. Who are standing, and we have even more that couldn't make their way into the room because of fire regulations. We apologize. We set up for 1,500 people. It looks like we've got over 2,000. I call that a good problem to have. We are here to welcome a special guest. I'll get to that in a few minutes. A great ally of Alberta. But before I do that, I want to remind you why we are all gathered here and why we are going to be working so hard, staying humble, working hard, and earning every vote over the next 7 months. And that is because Albertans are counting on us to get this right. Did you see the unemployment statistics out today? Unemployment up yet again. 8,000 part-time jobs lost last month alone. Alberta with the highest unemployment outside of Atlantic Canada. Did you ever think you would see that Calgary with the highest unemployment of any major city in Canada? Ladies and gentlemen, this is the legacy of a job-killing, tax-hiking, debt quadrupling, accidental socialist government that we will ensure is one and one.
That was the first standing ovation for Mr. Kenney. You remember in the first 30 seconds when he was talking about how there's over 1,000 people in the room. Now just 5 or 6 minutes later, well, we booked for 1,500 and it looks like we got over 2,000 from the stage. Bullshit! Now for Mr. Kenney's claims of painting Edmonton blue in 2019. Well, there are 19 ridings in Edmonton currently. In 2015, the NDP won 19 out of 19. Since most of the apparatus is from the Wild Rose Party, because, you know, the PC Party is now the Alberta Party, let's look at how the Wild Rose historically is done in Edmonton. In 2008, there were 17 ridings in Edmonton. Wild Rose won 0. In 2012, it went up to 19 ridings. Wild Rose won 0. In 2015, 19 ridings. Wild Rose won 0. Now, in that entire time, in the last 10 years, Edmontonians have elected MLAs from the Progressive Conservatives, the Alberta Liberals, the Alberta Party, and the Alberta New Democrats. So, what's the pattern? Now, as far as the one and done thing goes, yeah, it's a great slogan. It's great for the feels, but there's absolutely no history of it in Alberta. None. Over a century, Alberta has never had a one-term government party. Alberta has never had a minority government, and only 5 different parties have formed government in 113 years. Stuff like that don't change overnight. Stuff like that don't change because Doug Ford came to town. Stuff like that don't change because of one policy. But hey, whatever. Let's carry on.
And one of the reasons this happened, one of the reasons is because, yes, we had a downturn in part because of commodity prices. But we've been through those before, haven't we, as Albertans? But we are resilient and we are innovative. We've gotten through those downturns before. But something was different this time. This time, we seem to have governments in Edmonton and in Ottawa that were stacking the decks against working Albertans, that were doing everything they could to make a bad situation even worse, that poured fuel onto the flames of a deep recession, the longest and deepest in our modern history. They did it by raising taxes on everything, higher business taxes on employers, higher income taxes punishing hard work, they're going to cooperate with their close friend and ally Justin Trudeau to raise job-killing property taxes. They've raised property taxes that have made it harder for families to get by and businesses to pay the bills. But the biggest tax, the biggest tax increase in Alberta history, the multi-billion-dollar job-killing carbon tax that they did not mention in the last election. It isn't just the biggest tax hike in Alberta history, it is the biggest lie in Alberta history, and that alone is a reason to fire this government.
Okay, so Rachel Notley and Justin Trudeau increased property taxes, did they? Well, according to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs in Alberta, property taxes in Alberta are two parts. There is the part to maintain your municipality, and the other part is for public education. Education property tax. How does the province collect it? Every year, the province calculates, based on assessment value of property, the amount each municipality must contribute towards the public education system. Municipalities collect the education property tax from the ratepayers and then forward it to the province. Your share is based on the assessment value of your property and the local education property tax rate. A decrease in the local education property tax rate can help lessen the impact of assessment value increases on your tax bill. So right there, it's telling you that it's very rare that these percentages change. What does change is the assessment of your property. So if the economy is doing well, which Alberta is doing the best in Canada, and your property keeps increasing in assessment, that's Rachel Notley and Justin Trudeau's fault. Okay. What does this tax pay for? The education property tax supports all public and separate school students. The education property tax helps pay for instructional costs, including teacher salaries, textbooks, and other classroom resources. Now, why is education partially funded through a property tax? The education property tax provides Alberta's education system with a stable and sustainable source of revenue. Pooling the education property tax in the fund for distribution to all schools ensures that students receive a quality education regardless of their municipality's assessment wealth. See, now that's a very good point. If you don't live in a place like Edmonton or Calgary, where your properties keep increasing in value constantly, doing it this way guarantees that somebody living out in backwoods Alberta doesn't have a slum school compared to one in the cities. There's also a program in Alberta for seniors to defer part or all of their education property tax share. Now, since the city collects, since I'm in Edmonton, what does the city of Edmonton have to say? Property taxes. Each year, the city reviews how much money it needs to pay for municipal programs and services that are necessary to maintain and enhance Edmonton's high standard of living. To ensure that all Edmonton property owners pay their fair share of property taxes, the city follows the guidelines established by the provincial government and uses a property assessment process. By legislation, the city collects only enough taxes to support its programs and services. It cannot collect more, and it cannot collect less. So, it sounds to me the reality is assessment values are going up, cities are finding costs increasing at a higher rate, they are increasing their share, but apparently that's the fault of Rachel Notley and Justin Trudeau. Now, as far as the tax increases that he talked about, all the claims he used came from one think tank. Guess which one? That's right, the Fraser Prostitute. Now, the CPP increases have come into effect, which there didn't seem to be much real opposition to from the people or in Parliament. It's not a tax. according to this little pipsqueak organization called the OECD. If CPP increases are put into the CPP fund, that is not a tax. Nice try, Jason. Now, there was a middle bracket reduction from the federal Liberals, and the top bracket was increased. So who is he really speaking to here? The small business tax has gone down from 10.5 when the federal Liberals came in. It's currently 9%. Where are these tax increases, Mr. Kenney? Something else the Fraser Institute leaves out is it does not account for the tax-free Canada Child Benefit, which replaced 3 Harper benefits, which were taxable. So they're not including a tax-free benefit for all children as income because it can't be taxed. That's a ridiculous concept. It is income. It comes into families and parents. Seeing a pattern? Yeah, it's called bullshit. Let's carry on, shall we?
The tax that, according to modest estimates, has added $1,100 to the cost of living for the average Alberta family. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation estimates it may be as much as $2,500 in additional costs for an average Alberta family, and they've only just begun. They foisted on this without mentioning it in the last election. I've gone through their platform, by the way. I keep a copy of it in my desk in the legislature. And I pull it out at every question period. And I ask them to point out where it says anything about a carbon tax. Oh, by the way, did you hear the latest from Justin Trudeau? Did you hear today? Today our Prime Minister said that in the last federal election, Canadians, quotes, voted for a carbon tax. Let me ask you a question. We have a good sample, a couple of thousand hard-working Albertans here. Did you vote for a carbon tax in 2015? You know, when he said that, I went and checked the federal Liberal platform, and I couldn't find the words carbon tax or even carbon levy. All I found was a jumble of meaningless euphemisms and blather. There was no threat that if provinces don't punish their people for heating homes, that the federal government would Bigfoot into Alberta or Saskatchewan or any other province and impose a job-killing carbon tax. I'm sorry, Prime Minister, we don't buy your baloney, and we are going to fight your carbon tax. This carbon tax, you know, it's not. This is a carbon tax that is a tax on consuming a staple. Like they think this is some kind of a sin tax, right? They call it, the economists call it a Pigovian tax to spread out the cost of externalities. Basically, it's the same idea as a tax on cigarettes or a tax on booze. They want to discourage us from doing something that politicians don't approve of, like heating our homes. And filling up our gas tanks to drive to work. Folks, this is not a vice. It's not something that should be punished. And by the way, it doesn't work because you can only turn down the heat by so much at home when it's 30 below outside, right? What it does is it tells seniors on fixed incomes that have to count every penny. It says to single moms who are struggling to put food on the table. That it tells new Canadian families maybe who don't have their first job and are going to the food bank. It tells all of them that they have to turn the temperature down at home, that maybe they can't afford to buy that first car to get to work, and that if they do buy that car, they're going to be punished simply for doing the responsible thing, taking their kids to hockey practice, driving for seniors to drive in rural Alberta, to be active in the local community center. I'm sorry, these things are not vices to be punished by politicians. This is what we call normal life, and it should never be punished by big government.
Oh my God, the feels! Okay, before we get to that. Well, Mr. Kenney, I did look at the NDP platform. And on page 18, 5.13, we will take leadership on the issue of climate change and make sure Alberta is part of crafting solutions with stakeholders, other provinces, and the federal government. First steps will include an energy efficiency strategy and a renewable energy strategy. Seems pretty clear to me. I knew that when I voted. Crafting solutions. They have deemed the carbon levy to be part of the solution. It's there. Now, as far as Mr. Kenney going through the Liberal platform, he didn't see carbon tax, he didn't see carbon levy. Well played, Mr. Kenney. No, you didn't. But you did see something. Did you not? I go to pages 39 and 40 of the Liberal Party of Canada election platform. Climate change is an immediate and significant threat to our communities and our economy. The provinces and territories recognize the need to act now and have already begun to price carbon and take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. We will end the cycle of federal parties of all stripes setting arbitrary targets without a real federal, provincial, territorial plan in place. Well, we know that's bullshit, but it's in here. We will instead partner with provincial and territorial leaders to develop real climate change solutions consistent with our international obligations to protect the planet. Together, we will attend the Paris Climate Conference and within 90 days formally meet to establish a pan-Canadian framework for combating climate change. Partnering with the provinces and territories, we will create a new low-carbon economy trust. The trust will provide funding to projects that materially reduce carbon emissions under the new framework. We will endow the Low Carbon Economy Trust with $2 billion in our mandate. Well, where do you think that money is going to come from? Justin's trust account? The deniability and whataboutism is outstanding, I will say, without a doubt. Let's carry on.
Our figure said, that quotes on this question, she said, it could sometimes, she said, maybe Albertans could deal with the carbon tax by taking a bus or walking. Or, you know, those kinds of things. Taking a bus. I see a friend here from Pincher Creek. How many buses are running down there? How far can you walk in the middle of winter if you live in Cochrane, you're coming to Calgary? This coming from somebody who is driven around in a big, black, government-funded SUV. I'm sorry, Premier, if you want to talk, if you want to preach to Albertans, then maybe you should get out of the SUV and walk the talk. Cost burden on just ordinary folks living normal lives. It's also a cost on everybody, on small businesses that are struggling, and we had record insolvencies and bankruptcies in this recent recession. It's a tax on charities and nonprofits, on school boards. The Calgary Board of Education says that it is spending $3 million a year on the carbon tax, and they guess what? They had to cut spending this year to save $3 million. They cut junior kindergarten programming. Fewer JK programs for young Calgary kids because the school board has to put $3 million into the carbon tax coffers for the NDP. It doesn't make sense. Let me tell you a story. Let me tell you, is Jason Nixon here, by the way? He's hard to miss. He's our house leader. He's about 6'9", I think. Jason took me out to the Sundry Seniors Center up there in central Alberta. And this is a wonderful volunteer-driven organization. They all 100% volunteers. Their total annual operating budget is only $18,000. Wow. And with that, they keep seniors active in that rural community with programs every day, all day. They do amazing work, pinching their pennies. They're so efficient, they throw nickels around like they're manhole cutters, these guys. They are classic Albertans. These are people that built our province. Well, the carbon tax came in, and it added $700 to their cost of heating their senior center. And then they learned that they were going to have to face another 67% increase in the carbon tax. They'd be paying something like $1,700. And the board met and they said, you know, we may have to shut down the senior center because we can't afford it. And so the president called the premier's office and said, what do you expect us to do? And she said, how about you raise your membership fees and make the seniors pay more? This is coming from a government that calls itself progressive and compassionate. I'm sorry, Premier. There is no compassion in telling seniors on modest fixed incomes that they can't have an active life just so you can feel virtuous by imposing this carbon tax on Albertans. It isn't progressive and it's not compassionate.
No, them socialists are so mean. This is the exact same response to the out-of-context answer from Premier Notley, also used by the Alberta director of Jason's first gig in public view in Canada, Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Now, this question that was asked of Premier Notley was asked in the legislature press room in Edmonton by an Edmonton media member, and the Premier's response was based on Edmonton, a city of 1 million people, when she said there may be more bus trips in your future. You may walk a little more. She wasn't talking about being out in rancher country in southern Alberta or in the boreal forest in northern Alberta. But you never know it listening to these people. What Alberta Director of the CTF, Paige McPherson, completely in character said was, Premier Notley says if you're worried about the carbon tax, just walk or take the bus. Are you a family of 5 pushing a multi-child stroller from daycare to hockey practice? Well, just walk or take the bus. Do you live rurally where there is no public transit and it would literally take you over a day to walk to work? Just walk or take the bus. What ridiculous comments. Now, for a little background on what the Alberta Carbon Levy is. Now, obviously, putting a price on carbon is one of the key components of the Climate Leadership Plan in Alberta. But the information, for some reason or another, has been rather distorted, especially about how the revenue collected will be used, what the actual impact on families will be, and the interaction with the federal plan. Now, it's estimated $5.4 billion will be collected over 3 years from the levy and large industrial emitters. These funds are prohibited by law from going into general revenue and will be reinvested while helping households, businesses, and communities to adjust. Now, of that $5.4 billion in 3 years, $565 million are in small business tax cuts. Keep that in mind. $1.51 billion of it are in low and middle income household rebates. $151 million is assistance to Indigenous communities. $1.27 billion is in green infrastructure. $291 million is going to the phase out of coal generated electricity. $566 million is in grants for energy efficiency for homes and businesses. And almost $1 billion, $998 million is going to other initiatives. Support for those coal communities, renewable energy investment, innovation, and technology. That seems pretty clear. It says the average national natural gas bill will increase by approximately $5 per month before rebates in 2018. The carbon levy increase of 2018 accounts for 6% of your bill, and about 2/3 of Albertans will receive increased rebates to partially or fully offset the small cost increase. Now, that is something that needs to be explained, that, of course, Mr. Kenney neglects. Let's get to this senior center. The Sundre West Country Center is where Mr. Kenney was. It has about 120 members. So he wants to make such a huge deal about increasing membership. If at the high end, they're going to be paying $1,700 more a year, $120 a month, an extra dollar from their members a month is about 85% of that $1,700. So that's unreasonable. That's a weight that is too much. The spokesperson for it was one of the board members, and by the name of Ray Sharp, and the president of their board, Ed Wicks. President says, for a majority of our members, it is the one way to get out of the house, a nice low-level, low-cost thing to do. Now, an increase in utility costs through gas prices, which, of course, are market-driven, and the carbon levy. He says it has cost about, or has left the center short roughly $1,000 per year. While the group is currently using its financial reserves to make up the shortfall, Wick said the center needs to find a long-term solution. We have to either come up with new ways to counter that extra expense or raise membership fees, where we would lose some members or possibly even shut down. $1,000 a year, and you have 120 members. That's less than $10 a year each. Oh yeah, we're going to have to shut the doors. If we can't come up with another alternative, and if the carbon tax happens to get worse, I would say we only have enough reserve to last another 12 to 24 months. Yeah, these guys are really hard done by. My God, how can they go on? We wanted to decrease prices. We want to cut taxes. It's no free lunch, blue hairs. Manufacturing outrage based on feels. No, how many other nonprofits in Alberta are facing this same question? But he picked the one with seniors. And he picked the one in Sundre, Alberta. This is Alberta Bible Belt. This is people that would vote for UCP traffic cone. But hey, I'm just, picking specifics. Yeah, I know. Let's carry on.
This is all economic pain and no environmental gain. And even the experts admit this. Professor Leach is the guy who helped the NDP develop the carbon tax. And I'll tell you what he said. This is a direct quote. Until the rest of the world has policies that impose similar costs, you're not actually reducing emissions to the extent you think. You're just displacing the economic activity to other jurisdictions. So what's the point? What is the point? The economists call it the problem of carbon leakage. So what's leaking out of this province is jobs and investment and opportunity. $40 billion of investment from our oil and gas sector alone that's gone from Alberta to North Dakota and Texas to Kazakhstan and Iran, none of which jurisdictions have a carbon tax. So why are we engaged in this act of economic masochism when it will not make one whit of difference for the global environment? When we raised this with our premier, you know what she said? I asked her a question about this in May. She stood up in the legislature and she said, quotes, I'm not particularly interested in relitigating the carbon tax. I'm not particularly interested in relitigating the carbon tax. Well, Madam Premier, we have news for you. Albertans are interested in litigating the carbon tax, and we will do that in the next municipal election.
Do you ever notice how people who are involved with policy and formulation of carbon taxes, they're crackpots when they talk about the cost? When they say something that works for their means, they're the experts again. Interesting. I've really got nothing else to say, well, except for if you saw today, the Nobel Prize was awarded for science to the man who came up with the concept and developed the first working models for the carbon tax. He got a Nobel Prize. So, yeah, it's all bunk. Okay.
It's not over yet, because they raised it by 50% on January 1st of this year, and now they plan to raise it by a further 67%. Why? The worst reason in the world. They want to raise it by another 67% at least. Get this, I'm not making it up. They want to raise it by another 67% because Justin Trudeau asked them to. Because they want to please their close friend and ally, Justin Trudeau. Now, let's be clear. Mr. Trudeau. His close ally and friend Premier Notley, that if she punished Albertans with this job-killing carbon tax, that he would ensure the construction of a pipeline. Exactly. How's that turning out? One of the first things he did as Prime Minister was to cancel the approved Northern Gateway pipeline. Then Barack Obama, when he vetoed the Keystone XL pipeline, Justin Trudeau brought up the white flag of surrender. Then he killed the Energy East pipeline through new regulations. Now he's enshrining a ban on Northern BC tanker traffic for Canadian oil leaving the country. He's not banning OPEC oil coming into our ports. And Trudeau has Bill C-69, the No More Pipelines Act, which will make it impossible ever to build a future pipeline. He has done nothing to force the government of British Columbia to respect the rule of law and the Constitution of Canada, to end that NDP government's campaign of obstruction. I'm sorry, Premier, you promised the Prime Minister a job-killing carbon tax in return for pipelines. We don't have an inch of pipe in the ground. It is time to repeal Alberta's carbon tax. That she was going to, quote, hold her friend Justin Trudeau's feet to the fire. She said she was going to hold his feet to the fire to insist that he appeal it to the Supreme Court of Canada, that he bring in federal legislation guaranteeing Trans Mountain, and that he would give a timeline for the completion of the pipeline. But yesterday, we got Justin Trudeau's response: no appeal, no legislation, no timeline. Then I say no carbon tax. So please understand what's really going on here. This isn't about a $30 ton carbon tax, because even the most passionate, especially the most passionate advocates of carbon taxes, say that $30, $50 a ton doesn't make a whit of difference. And this is why neither the NDP government here nor the federal Liberals in Ottawa can give us an estimate of by how much carbon emissions will be reduced as a result of their carbon tax, because it won't by any measurable standard. And this is where so let's tell you the truth. The truth is that this is all just a frog in the pot. You ever heard that story? Yeah. So for those who don't know, you take a frog and you put the frog in a pot of scalding hot boiling water. It jumps out right away. So the self-preservation instinct kicks in. But you put the same frog in a pot of icy cold water, and that's kind of his normal environment. He thinks that's pretty cozy, and you turn it up into a lukewarm. That's kind of nice, a summer day kind of temperature. You turn that up into a slow simmer. He doesn't really notice, he's so relaxed by now. And from a simmer, you gradually turn it up to a boil, and what do you have? A boiled frog. That's the policy of incrementalism. The carbon tax proponents, if we listen to them, admit this. The same Professor Leach has said that the carbon tax needs to be at least $200 a ton in order to achieve greenhouse gas emission targets. And a secret Environment Canada memo that was leaked from Justin Trudeau's government, leaked in March of last year, says that the carbon tax would need to be $300 a ton for the federal government to meet its targets. So this is why they started at 20, they went to 30, and then 50, and gradually they want to raise it again and again and again. But here's the good news: we're not going to let them get away with it. By the way, you get this is hilarious. I don't know if you saw this last week. One of these pro-carbon tax think tanks came out with a study, and they said that Canadians will become richer with more money in their wallets as a result of the carbon tax. Wow. If you buy that, folks, I got some swampland in Florida to sell you. What a whopper. You know, Jack Mintz, who is the leading tax policy expert in the country, responded to this, saying that he said there's no way that in fact everybody with an income of over $40,000 a year will end up paying more. And this is based on the whole idea of rebates. You take money out of the left pocket, put it back in the right pocket. Well, here's the problem. The NDP said there would be rebates, but then for the increase in the carbon tax from $30 to $50 a ton, the rebates have disappeared. And even their phony green spending has vaporized. You know, remember the low-flow shower heads, and they were going, she got a light bulb. Marquee here got the free light bulb. She got her money's worth from the carbon tax. So, folks, all of this is to say that nobody is buying. Now, that is why we need to act, and that is why we have worked so hard in the past 2 years to build this big, broad, mainstream, crow-throat coalition of Albertans to get our province back on track. And then we will act. And I can tell you, we will act should we be honored with a mandate from Albertans in the next election. We will convene an extraordinary summer session of Alberta's legislature to begin the work of repealing the damage done to this province by the NDP, beginning with Bill No. 1, the carbon tax repeal act.
And that, of course, was another standing ovation at the finish. Oh, so much to say about that recorded segment. The great allies Rachel Notley and Justin Trudeau. Have you read a paper lately? Yeah, it's all politics, but that's exactly what he's doing as well. Not exactly allies. Now, as far as for what Justin Trudeau killed, let's review, shall we? June 30th, 2016, the Federal Court of Appeal has overturned approval of Enbridge's controversial Northern Gateway project after finding Ottawa failed to properly consult the First Nations affected by the pipeline. Quote from the ruling, "We find that Canada offered only a brief, hurried, and inadequate opportunity to exchange and discuss information and to dialogue. It would have taken Canada little time and little organizational effort to engage in meaningful dialogue on these and other subjects of prime importance to Aboriginal peoples. But this did not happen." And who was the government who did that? Not the Trudeau government. I'm just going to look for another quote here. The ruling noted the Aboriginal groups generally availed themselves of the Joint Review Panel hearings submitted both oral and written testimony to the National Energy Board. But the release of the Joint Review Panel report was only the third step in a 5-part process before the permit to build the pipeline could be issued by the Harper government. In the fourth phase, the Crown was supposed to consult with Aboriginal peoples on any project-related concerns that were outside of the Joint Review Panel's mandate. The appeal court ruling says the standard for consultation doesn't have to be perfection, but rather whether reasonable efforts to inform and consult were made. The judges found the federal government had not met that standard. Many impacts of the project, some identified in the report of the Joint Review Panel, some not, were left undisclosed, undiscussed, and unconsidered. The court found the government is entitled to come to a decision by balancing the economic, cultural, and environmental considerations affecting the project. But because of the failed Aboriginal consultation, the panel quashed the approval of the pipeline. The ruling says the government can now reconsider the submissions which are already on the public record in order to consider the concerns of First Nations, or they can redo Aboriginal consultation. Either way, once the process is completed, the approval of the project will go back to the federal government. At that point in time, it was the decision of the new government to not appeal that decision and to not complete the consultations. Everybody remembers the NGP protests. He let it die, which he should have done. Why? Because the Harper government didn't consult. Now for the Keystone XL. This is from the Washington Post. Why was KXL rejected? Well, much of the rhetoric surrounding Keystone XL's rejection by the Obama administration was about the pipeline's potential environmental impacts due to spills and its contribution to global warming and climate change by increasing the amount of dirty bitumen oil that is processed and burned. The proposed extension was ultimately rejected, however, because it was not going to live up to the promises it was making with regards to permanent job creation, reduction of gas prices, and reduction of U.S. dependence on foreign oil. According to a report from the Cornell University Global Labor Institute, the pipeline was expected to generate only between 2,500 and 4,650 new construction jobs over a 2-year span, much lower numbers than were originally estimated, and these jobs would only be temporary rather than permanent. The steel used in the pipeline was very likely to come from Canada and India rather than the United States. The project was expected to result in higher gas prices in some parts of the U.S., especially in the Midwest, because the refining of this oil would be done further away in Texas. And with the oil coming from Canada and the Texas oil refineries, where the oil was to be processed, being half owned by Saudi Arabian oil company Saudi Aramco, the project would not truly improve U.S. independence from foreign oil. Interesting. That's what opponents to pipelines have been saying about Northern Gateway and Trans Mountain and Energy East in Canada. Speaking of Energy East, Justin Trudeau killed it with new regulations. Did he? Well, October 2017, out of the National Observer, Warren Mabey. Did regulation kill Energy East? Conservative leader Andrew Scheer thinks it did. So does Premier Brad Wall of Saskatchewan, at that time Premier. TransCanada, the project's proponent, has been circumspect, merely announcing that changed circumstances led them to terminate the project earlier in October 2017. Energy East would have carried 1.1 million barrels of crude oil per day from Alberta to New Brunswick, using repurposed existing natural gas pipelines for much of its length. At more than 4,500 kilometers, this would have been the longest pipeline in Canada. It would have required cooperation among the federal government, 6 provinces, 75 municipalities, and more than 50 First Nations. All energy mega projects are subject to review by the National Energy Board, the regulatory body that is responsible for overseeing energy projects, pipelines, and trade of those commodities in Canada. At the beginning of 2016, the Liberal government announced it would extend the reviews of 2 pipeline projects, Energy East and Kinder Morgan's Trans Mountain expansion. This posed a challenge for the proponent TransCanada and added cost to the process. Then, in August 2016, the entire consultation process was derailed due to conflict of interest issues that were uncovered by the National Observer. It was restarted from scratch in early 2017, a delay that exposed the Energy East project to more regulatory uncertainty. Now, recall that, for example, the panel that was assembled by the Harper National Energy Board to do the review on Energy East had to resign from that position, all of them, for conflict of interest. Appointed by Harper National Energy Board, the entire board had to resign for conflict of interest. Yeah, that sounds like Justin Trudeau's fault. The National Energy Board in 2017, August, now under direction from the Trudeau government, decided to include upstream and downstream emissions associated with the new oil production and consumption when it considered the new environmental implications of the Energy East project. TransCanada put Energy East on hold the next month in September 2017 and cancelled in October. The company announced it will write down an estimated $1 billion in costs associated with the terminated project. So did regulation kill it? Many other things killed it. President Trump's restart of Keystone XL, which is all just coincidentally also happens to be owned by TransCanada Pipeline. An ongoing slump in oil prices and a slowdown in Alberta oil sands production growth all likely had much more impact on the decision. They may well have led to the project's end even without any regulatory changes. So, again, Justin Trudeau killed it? No. Go talk to TransCanada. It has a much more profitable operation with Keystone XL. The only reason Energy East was ever brought up is because Keystone was not going to get approved by the Obama administration. Now, the tanker ban that came out of nowhere, Mr. Kenney? Page 44 of the Liberal Party of Canada election platform. We will also directly invest in ocean science. Stephen Harper cut $40 million from the federal ocean science and monitoring programs. We will restore that funding so that we can protect the health of our fish stocks, monitor contaminants and pollution in our oceans, and support responsible and sustained aquaculture industries on our coasts. We will use scientific evidence and the precautionary principle and take into account climate change when making decisions affecting fish stocks and ecosystem management. That's exactly what they did. Now, again, regarding the tanker ban, there has been an informal moratorium on large tanker traffic in Dixon Entrance, Hecate Strait, and the Queen Charlotte Sound since 1972. Since then, federal and provincial governments have commissioned periodic studies to reassess whether to lift the tanker moratorium. Each study has concluded that the risk of tanker spills is too high. In 2003-2004, the federal government initiated a 3-part review process, including a scientific review by the Royal Society of Canada, which came to be known as the RSC report, a First Nations engagement process, the Brooks report, and a public review process, the Priddle panel. The RSC report concluded that the present restriction on tanker traffic along the west coast of British Columbia should be maintained for the time being. In 2009, the Canadian government's position was that there is no moratorium on tanker traffic in the coast waters of BC. However, on December 7, 2010, Canada's environmental watchdog, at that time Scott Vaughan, Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development, in a damning report stated, Canada's government is not ready to handle a major oil spill from a tanker because its emergency response plan is out of date. In December of 2010, the Federal House of Commons passed a non-binding motion to ban bulk oil tanker traffic in the Dixon Entrance, the Cathay Strait, and the Queen Charlotte Sound. In November 2015, Prime Minister Trudeau's mandate letter to the Minister of Transport directed that the moratorium be formalized. So, in December 2010, who was the government then? Well, it wasn't Justin Trudeau. Now, as far as that whopper study from a enviro-pocketed think tank, well, the executive director of that think tank is one Mark Cameron. Originally from BC, Mark lives in Ottawa and has worked in public policy roles in government, business, and consulting for over 20 years. He has worked in several MPs and ministers' offices, including working in the Office of the Prime Minister as Director of Policy and Research and Senior Policy Advisor from 2006 to 2009. Who was the Prime Minister then? He's also worked for Ontario Power Generation, BlackBerry, and has consulted on energy environmental issues, most recently heading the energy practice at Hill and Knowlton Strategies, which, of course, any Canadians who are familiar with things know who H&K is. Mark has long been engaged in the environmental policy debate in Canada and serves on the advisory board of the Pembina Institute and the steering committee of Sustainable Prosperity. Why did Mark join Clean Prosperity, who was behind the study? This is a quote from him. Canadian businesses, governments, and our citizens can no longer afford to pit the environment and the economy against each other. For Canada to succeed, economic competitiveness and environmental sustainability need to go hand in hand. Okay, so there we go. This quack, this source of the whopper, has a work history in nothing less than the PMO of Stephen Harper. I gather he said something that you don't agree with, Jason. The study, which has been getting a fair amount of media, shows that the vast majority of households at all income levels and family types would be net financial winners from a carbon dividends system, which is exactly what the Alberta carbon levy is and what the yet to come federal carbon tax program will look like. One last piece of Jason Kenney.
Let us thank our great friends just to the east of us in the province, in the great province of Saskatchewan. They've been fighting the fight for us for so long. I think they've converted a lot of Albertans into being Riders fans. But honestly, okay, I never should have gone there, right? But honestly, as Albertans, I just want to say thank you to former Premier Grant Hall, and thank you to Saskatchewan Premier Scott Hall for being the best Premier defending Alberta in the last 2 years. Across the country. New Brunswick, I was up there a month ago, campaigning with Blaine Higgs, the leader of the PC party. I stood on a platform with him when he committed to opposing Justin Trudeau's carbon tax, joining with us in a lawsuit against Justin Trudeau on that carbon tax, and repealing the ban on fracking in New Brunswick, and supporting Energy East. And then in Quebec this week, au Québec, ils ont élu un gouvernement pro-entreprise qui est dédié à l'élimination des tarifications, qui est un gouvernement en faveur des ressources, de croissance économique. J'espère une bonne partenaire de l'Alberta. This week, Quebec was elected a government that says it wants to end Quebec's dependency on equalization. Creation and resources a government with which we can work. And then yesterday, big news when the Progressive Conservative government of Manitoba announced a $183 carbon tax to anti-carbon tax. Thank you, Premier Brian Pallister, for listening to Manitobans and joining with the growing national coalition. But now, friends, I want to introduce the most important ally. The most important ally that we have. Whose election represents the beginning of a sea change on the fight against high taxes and this carbon tax in particular. A man who governs for the people. A man with a great depth of common sense. A man who stood up to the elites, even in his own party, to reverse their commitment to a carbon tax. A man who is a champion of our resource industries and jobs, a great ally of the West and of Alberta, who is now in our corner on his first visit to Calgary, on his first visit to Western Canada. Please join with me in welcoming our great friend, the Premier of Alberta.
Blaine Higgs, yes, Blaine Higgs, committing to Energy East, which is dead, committing to lifting the ban on fracking in New Brunswick, committing to fighting the carbon tax. Blaine Higgs, who worked for almost 25 years for Irving Oil. Yeah, okay. Now, about Quebec, promising they're going to get off equalization. Well, Kenney said this the night of the victory in Quebec. Well, is he right? Did the CAQ promise a zero equalization Quebec? Well, 11 months ago, François Legault did indeed say that he yearned for an equalization-free Quebec. What I want to say to Quebecers is that a CAQ government will seek zero equalization. A CAQ government will eliminate the wealth gap with the rest of Canada. A CAQ government will have ambition, will think big for Quebec. That was November 22nd, 2017. Now, for 50 years, Quebec has been the most consistent and disproportionate recipient of equalization. In this fiscal year alone, Quebec will receive $11.7 billion out of a total equalization payout of $18.9 billion. Without equalization from the rest of Canada, Quebec would instantly lose up to 1/10 of its provincial budget. But according to the cold, hard numbers of equalization, the only way Quebec could break this spiral would be to immediately launch into the most dizzying period of economic growth in modern Canadian history. Quebec's GDP per capita, currently standing at about $47,500, would have to rise to $60,000. Even at China-sized rates of economic growth, this could take upwards of 10 years. It would require Quebec to undergo a Klondike Gold Rush-sized economic boom every few months. Ben Eisen, a senior fellow at the Fraser Institute, expressed doubts that Quebec could ever hope to achieve zero equalization within the course of a single government. A more realistic timeline is that Quebec's economy would have to noticeably outgrow Canada's economy for at least 20 years. And this is coming from Tristan Hopper in the National Post. So, is this setting up the Legault government to be attacked by Kenney in the future? Well, possibly. When Kenney spoke French, I would estimate there was maybe 20 people in the whole room that can understand it. I was one of them. Mr. Kenney, you've spent close to 2 decades in one capacity or another in Ottawa. Your French sucks. The rest of that introduction was nothing but slogans, white lies, and populism. So, he introduced the guest for the evening. If Kenney was the steak, Doug Ford was definitely the sizzle. Drizzle? Fizzle? I don't know. But let's get on with it.
Possible. My friends, most of all, I want to thank each and every one of you tonight. Thank you for the warm welcome to Alberta. I love Alberta. I love the people here. My friends, as the Premier of Ontario and as a fellow Conservative, it's an honor to be addressing the United Conservative Party of Alberta. It's also an honor to share this stage with a true blue conservative, your party's leader, and the next Premier of Alberta, Jason. Brian Pallister and I, that's the right thing to do for Manitoba because they just jumped in and joined the fight. So Brian, way to go. He's a champion. We'll all be at the Premier's table defending common sense and Canadian taxpayers to fight against Trudeau's carbon tax. It's really, my friends, the worst tax ever. A tax we can't afford, a job-killing tax that hikes up the price of services and goods and drives up the price of heating your homes. My friends, the National Post has called Jason Kenney perhaps the best immigration minister ever. Jason Kenney. And during Jason's time in Ottawa, his fellow MPs have called him the best overall MVP. They called him the hardest working and the most knowledgeable. but I'm proud to say, and I'm very proud, Jason, to call Jason my friend. When Jason and I met, it was not too long ago at the Federal Conservative Party Convention in Halifax, we spoke to the whole country about the importance of standing against politicians, against the elites who oppose the development of natural resources that allow provinces like Alberta to contribute to Canada's prosperity. And I can tell you, Alberta plays a key role in contributing to all of Canada, not just spoke about the importance of being a united Conservatives, united under one cause, respecting taxpayers. Because we are always stronger when we are united. That's why 2 years ago, the grassroots people of Alberta, common sense Conservatives, made the decision to focus on what unites all of us together. My friends, moving forward, we will defeat the NDP, and we will bring common sense back to Alberta.
Wow, what a stunning orator. I'm curious who this former immigration minister named Jason Kenney is, and I was not aware there are MPPs in Ottawa. That's interesting, Doug. You say that you went to a party convention to speak against politicians. Yeah, okay.
It takes a lot of hard work by a lot of volunteers, but you will do it. I know you will, because, my friends, we did it. We did it after 15 years of Liberal government in Ontario. We saw 15 years of Liberal scandal, 15 years of out-of-control spending, and 15 years of waste. Big taxes, big deficits, and big government. Change has finally come to our province, and a new day has dawned in Ontario. Ontario finally has a government for the people. And I'll tell you, and soon, so will Alberta. I'm going to make a very, very bold prediction. You heard it here first. I don't think you're going to have to wait 15 years for change to come to Alberta. Talking with people all across Ontario. Tonight, I also want to talk to the people of Alberta. I'm speaking now to all the women and men who might be worried about keeping their job or worried about finding a job. I'm speaking to all the people who are worried about paying rent or worried about paying bills. I'm talking to all the people who are worried about having to pay a massive new carbon tax, 170% tax on natural gas. That is unacceptable. A tax you can't afford. I have a message for all these people and all the people of Alberta. Stay strong. Your next election is one that Conservatives can win. An election we will win, and an election we must win. because you have never forgotten who you work for, all of you, all of us. We all work for the people. The other parties answer to the special interests, to the elites, to the activists, but we are looking out for the little guy. Our opponents don't play fair, and it's going to take a lot of work, but believe me, if you think getting ready for an election next year is hard, my friends, just imagine doing it in just 5 weeks. 5 weeks!
You did it, buddy! That's all it does!
Because that's what we did in Ontario. We had 5 weeks to get the election campaign up and running. And I'm sure we broke some sort of record out there. But it's not a secret why we succeeded. We gave the people of Ontario a clear choice based on 5 clear priorities. Putting more money into people's pockets, cleaning up the hydro mess, creating good paying jobs, and restoring accountability, integrity, and trust, and ending hallway health care in Ontario. That's the plan, my friends. We took that plan from one end of Ontario to the other. We went to barns and backyards, from barbecues to bingo halls, from Toronto to Timmins, from Cornwall to Kenora, and every place in between. We took our plans and new Canadians to every race, every language, and every faith. Our plan treated everybody equally, treated everybody with respect. It's a plan based on listening to the people, answering their phone calls, answering their questions, and answering their letters. Because listening to the people makes it better for a great leader. And I can tell you, my friends, we won Ontario's election because we listened to the people of Ontario, just like Jason is listening to the great people of Alberta. We refuse to be out-hustled. We refuse to be outworked. And most importantly, my friends, we refuse to back down, because the elites, the activists, the insiders, and their media friends, they spent the entire campaign trying to get us to apologize for being conservative. They told us we couldn't possibly keep our promises to the people. They told us it couldn't be done and it shouldn't be done. They said we couldn't possibly get rid of Hydro One CEO on the board. Well, guess what? We did it. They said we couldn't possibly cancel Kathleen Wynn's green energy scam, and I'll tell you, that was the biggest scam out there. They said we couldn't possibly get rid of the Liberal cap-and-trade carbon tax. Well, guess what, my friends? We did that as well. And next up, our plan to cut Ontario gas prices by 10 cents a litre. Once again, they said we couldn't do it. Well, my friends, less than 2 weeks ago, we cut the gas prices in Ontario by 5 cents a litre. Time and time again, we stuck to our principles. We didn't back down, and we won. And that's why my message to you tonight is very clear. They will try to define you, and don't let them do it. They will try to force you to apologize for being a conservative, but don't let them do it. They attack us because the other option is to talk about their record. and their record is very clear. Hiking taxes, keeping job creators out of the province, dragging their feet on energy projects like the Trans Mountain Pipeline, imposing a carbon tax on families and businesses. Oh, they're killing us already. You're 100% right. A tax that the people of Alberta didn't even vote for. The worst tax ever, my friends. The worst tax ever.
Yeah, Dougie's government, all about listening to the people. Yeah, I guess that's why there are cabinet ministers like Mulroney and McLeod that deny interview requests day after day after day after day. I don't know, I remember, I think it was in August, 80,000 jobs lost in Ontario in 1 month. I don't recall Dougie saying anything about that. That 170% increase line, there were people in that room, looking at each other going, what the fuck is he talking about? That's how far out of whack that one was. Hydro One. Yeah, let's talk about Hydro One. Peter Thompson, National Post. Simply put, the Ford government's actions with respect to Hydro One represent an unprecedented intrusion into the private capital market, noted one senior Bay Street banker. This is an act of a leftist South American dictator, not a new progressive conservative government that professes to be open for business. Shameful. It's extraordinary, noted another senior banker. It's extraordinary for a government to include a provision in the act where it cannot be sued by shareholders. It transforms a growth-orientated company that shareholders bought into basically back into a crown corporation. From now on, it will only be able to attract people who are comfortable working in a crown corporation. It's the wrong way to do it. The executive noted that publicly listed electric companies like Fortis, Emera, and AltaGas have all made transformative acquisitions outside of Canada. Hydro One announced one last year, and it may not yet go through. The government has breached its trust to act as an investor and not as a manager by sending a stunning anti-business message to global investors, says the Bay Street executive. One wonders how investors could ever trust Ontario as a counterparty, given how the carpet has been pulled and billions of dollars lost. In that regard, as the largest shareholder, the province is the biggest loser on its investment by these actions. Since the shares reached a recent high of $22.26 on January 26, 2018, the value of the government stake has fallen by about $900 million, considerably more than what the company will save from ousting the board and the chief executive. Way to go, Dougie. Awesome. Now, as far as him reducing the price of gasoline, in case you didn't see it, this is from the American Automobile Association. What is the difference between summer and winter blend gasoline? The difference between summer and winter blend gasoline involves the Reid vapor pressure of the fuel, the RVP. It is a measure of how easily the fuel evaporates at a given temperature. The more volatile the gasoline, a higher RVP, the easier it evaporates. Winter blend fuel has a higher RVP because the fuel must be able to evaporate at low temperatures for the engine to operate properly, especially when the engine is cold. If the RVP is too low on a cold day, the vehicle will be hard to start, and once started will run rough. Summer blend gas has a lower RVP to prevent excessive evaporation when ambient temperatures rise. The switch between the two fuels happens twice a year, once in the fall to winter blend and again in the spring to summer blend. The changeover requires significant work at refineries, so oil companies schedule their maintenance for those times when they will already be shut down for the blend switches. Winter blend gasoline is upwards of 10% cheaper to manufacture. You did not lower gas prices 1 fucking cent, Dougie.
Justin Trudeau, my message to you is very clear. You either support jobs, families, and hardworking people of Canada, or you support a carbon tax. But I'll tell you, you can't sit on the fence, because when you sit on the fence, you get splinters. Friends, let me tell you, when the left are losing, the left start attacking, they spread misinformation, so get ready. My friends in Ontario, we know a little bit about what the NDP is in government. I'll tell you, we learned that lesson. For those who don't know, I'll give you a hint. It wasn't good. In fact, my friends, it was an absolute disaster. They wrecked our economy, and they were defeated in the next election. Now let me say a couple words about the federal Liberals. From day one, we offered our full support to the federal government to make sure the NAFTA deal got done. We are cautiously optimistic, and I say cautiously optimistic, that the USMCA agreement will create continued opportunities. During these negotiations, we made it clear that any deal must protect our steel, aluminum, auto, and agriculture center industries top of mind. This new deal cannot leave our farmers behind. Farming jobs and farming families must never be treated like a bargaining chip. My government has been doing its part. Fair and free trade with the United States has to succeed. That's not the only thing we need from our federal Liberals. We also need the federal Liberals to make changes to the proposed approval process for pipelines. The Trudeau Liberals Bill C-69 is the worst possible news at the worst possible time for Canada's energy industry. I can tell you this new process to approve and regulate pipelines puts future projects at risk. It creates more uncertainty and endless process delays. It erodes Canada's economic competitiveness. It holds back natural resource development for the whole country. That's why, my friends, in August, my government joined Saskatchewan in refusing to endorse this new approval process. But what we need most right now from Justin Trudeau is for the federal government to stop playing politics with people's livelihoods. They need to start taking Canadian jobs seriously, and that starts with scrapping the carbon tax. My friends, the carbon tax is the worst tax ever anywhere. It the environment. It's just another Trudeau's liberal tax grab right out of your pocket. It makes gas more expensive. It makes home heating more expensive. It makes everything more expensive. The carbon tax cripples jobs. It will shut down factories, shut down mills, and shut down mines. It will destroy small businesses and force more young people to leave to find good jobs. It's the most divisive, most regressive tax in Canadian history. Our government will fight this carbon tax with every tool at our disposal. We have a provincial allies like Scotland and Saskatchewan. Earlier this week, I was thrilled to see my colleague Brian Pallister, as I said earlier, in Manitoba, to join the fight against the liberal carbon tax. And soon, my friend, Jason Kenney will join us. Cabinet table and in the courtroom. We will beat the carbon tax. I can assure you this. As conservatives, here's what we're going to do. We're going to lower taxes, get back on path to balanced budgets, cut red tape and regulations, reduce energy costs, and embrace free trade. Recruit new investment and get those pipelines built as sure as I'm standing here. As I said during my election, my friends, my government's going to put up a big sign that says Ontario is open for business. That finally says Alberta is open for business. And then all of us are going to put up even a bigger sign that says Canada is open. In 2019, let's elect a new, united conservative government in Alberta. This election is yours to win, my friends. The future is in your hands. Change is coming to Alberta. Party with the taxpayers' money, and I can tell you, we took Kathleen Williams' hands out of our pocket in Ontario taxpayers, and along with Jason Kenney, we will fight the carbon tax and get Justin Trudeau's hands out of our pocket. new day has dawned in Ontario, and a new day will dawn in Alberta.
Sure thing, Dougie, for the people, yeah. Oh, Ontario, what have you done? My God. Obviously, he has no regard or idea about jurisdiction or how any of that stuff works. You know, that's elite stuff. Hyperbole over the top. Of course, absolutely no mention all night long that oil and gas industry supports carbon pricing. You notice how Doug said everything's going to get fixed. He didn't even give lip service to mention Indigenous, unceded lands, treaties, nothing. Like they don't exist. And Canada will be open for business. Yeah, we've been open for a while. If you've noticed, we're open. The profits leave. And oil and gas is no bigger example. My time management really sucks the last few weeks. I had more stuff to go through, but I'm not going to get through it, so I'm not even going to start. I'm just going to tell you, if you're so inclined. This is by no means a slam dunk. There are people that are right of center who are not real impressed with this strategy and these alliances. Graham Thompson was a fixture at the Alberta legislature for decades. The Edmonton Journal and Post Media in Alberta. He did a guest column for CBC on October 5th called Think About It. Jason Kenney is holding a rally with Doug Ford. In Maclean's, Jen Gerson. The real reason for Doug Ford and Jason Kenney's anti-carbon tax crusade. And in the National Post, believe it or not, this is three writers that, on my show. National Post, Andrew Coyne. The dirty little secret, anti-carbon tax folks would prefer you did not know. I was going to go over them, but I blew my time. The silence didn't help either. But that's it. Wow. Never been to a low information rally before. Now I have. That's the truth. See you next week on The View Up Here. Good night.